today. Deidre, did you have any opening comments that you wanted to make, or would you like me to just go ahead and jump into the items that we were going to talk about today?
You know, I'd just like to say good morning, and I think we can just jump in.
Okay, sounds good. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. And so if you haven't had an opportunity to check in with your region at the top, don't worry about it. We're going to go ahead and you'll have an opportunity to do that in just a moment. So let me go ahead and share my screen. One of the first things we're going to talk about today is where you can find some of the, find the resources that are available in Illinois WorkNet for the EPIC partner tools. And we have a couple of places where you can, different ways you can access it. But one of the main ways is if you go to illinoisworknet.com/EPIC partners. And Dee, if you want to put that into the chat, that'd be great. And so if you go to illinoisworknet.com/EPIC partners.
Natasha, we're not seeing anything.
Oh, well, darn it. I thought I was sharing my screen. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so there we go. So if you go to illinoisworknet.com/EPIC partners, you'll see the partner program guide, and you will see that we have a couple different ways, and we'll be updating this as we continue to move forward. You can find a full list of resources, which currently is, you know, a list of different categories of resources. We have all the items in alphabetical order, and then we try to identify, you know, specifically ones that are of interest, mainly for, you know, the DHS versus CBO and so forth. And let me go back to the EPIC Partner Guide. We have a list of tutorials that Dee has put together, and our video tutorials that Dee has put together to cover the tools for the intake piece. These are specific to the DHS partners at this time. We have a listing of our archived webinars, and yep. Okay, and so I'll be moving this May 4th TA webinar up to the front of this playlist right after we get off the phone. But one of the things I wanted to point out specifically in this area is this is where you can find not only your archived webinars, but if you're interested in seeing the messages, the webinars that are being provided to the CBOs, you can access those webinars through here as well. One of the things that we covered on, let's see, Wednesday is our standing TA webinar for the CBOs, and we covered the progress page, which we're going to take a look at today, and the enrollment dashboard, but then we also covered specifically information on how for them to fill out the 2151 and the 2151A forms. So if you'd like to watch that webinar, it is available to you. We have our calendar, and then we have the, and again, more resources by category. So you'll see updates to this page as well. Let me go into I'm in EPIC, I'm on the test site, and one of the things that you'll see is whenever you are logged into Illinois WorkNet, the EPIC resources, you can click on your login, and what you'll see is a place called EPIC Partner Resources. Ooh, and I'm in test, so let me just go directly there. What it'll do whenever you are logged into let me log into production real quick. I'll just show you where it's going to take you. Let me get there first. Here we go, restricted EPIC resources. So if I'm in my EPIC tools and I click on my login information and I click on EPIC Partner Resources, what it's going to do is take me to a page that has the restricted resources available. So since you're already logged into your EPIC tools, then it'll just automatically pull you in so you don't have to log in again to see these restricted resources. Plus, it gives you access back to the partner guide, which we just covered.
And Natasha, can we make sure that the CBO manual is also on that restricted page for the regions?
Yes. Let me just put that down. Make a note to myself. Okay. And okay, so that's how you find the different resources. There's just a couple of different ways to access those resources. One of the new updates that we just pushed out yesterday is the updates to some dashboards, so you have access to the Enroll dashboard. And since you are DHS staff, you have access to multiple dashboards, and so when you click on dashboards, it's going to give you a drop-down list. You can do the intake, which is what you're currently used to using, intake projections, and then the enrolled dashboard. And you will see all your customers that you have access to that have been enrolled, so they're in the EPIC services group or the treatment group. And you'll see that we have a referral pending. So that means that their appointment, you've made the referral to a CBO, but the appointment hasn't been scheduled yet. You'll see that list, and then you can go to referral pending where we have individuals that have an appointment set. You can see the referral pendings for customers who have made their initial appointment date has passed, but they haven't had that uploaded 2151 form. And so we understand that the 2151 form needs to be updated and in the system within 48 hours of that initial appointment. We also have a line item, so you can see the customers that did not show up for their appointment. And the CBO is responsible for making a minimum of 1 attempt, but we're really encouraging them to make multiple attempts because, of course, we know these people are in our treatment group, and we want to make sure that we do everything possible to help them have a successful outcome. And then we have a line item here that shows that they have the 2151 form, but they're not formally enrolled into a program yet. And again, this is just more of an for your information, but the CBO, this is probably more of interest to the CBO, just so they can say, oh, oops, I need to make sure I actually clicked that they're enrolled into a program. And so this line item shows that they have both a 2151 form and they have formally enrolled them into a training program. If the person, this is line item right here, it says DHS review, recommends sanction, they've uploaded the 2151A form. What this means is that the CBO has gone through multiple attempts to try to get this person to come into their first appointment, and they are just not responding. We've encouraged them to reach out to you as well. So you could say, hey, Natasha isn't showing up. Do you have an alternate phone number? Do you know how, could you reach out to this person because they're just not returning our phone calls? Did something happen? What's going on with this person? So we encourage that type of conversation prior to getting to the recommend sanction because, again, we don't want them to be sanctioned. But this is where you as a DHS staff person can look to, find people that would fall into this category. Also, whenever they have uploaded their 2151A form that says that a person should be the recommending sanction, an email message will, LMyWorkNet message and an email message will go out to the DHS staff that have access to that customer. So it is a big red flag, and we use notifications to let you know as well, besides the dashboard. Then the next area is more about when they're providing either their change of status or their monthly progress. And so this has been updated since last week. So what's going to happen is the CBOs are going to be required to submit their 2151A between the 1st and the 5th of each month. And then that way we know, if they're past due, then they need to upload those 2151 forms. If it's, the first of the month, and it's just automatically going to say they're past due. But as soon as they upload that 2151 form, then they'll be moved to the green section. Or let's say a person comes in on the 15th of the month, and their 2151 form isn't due until the 1st, then they're in this white row. Just kind of for your information, this person doesn't require that form yet. The next area is primarily for the CBO staff because, we have the yellow, green, and red, just so they can, quickly see at a glance where people are within their organization, so they can take the appropriate steps to, ensure this person is successful to the best of their ability. Again, we have one line item specifically down here that has DHS review, and this is going to be of particular interest to you because, again, this is where they've uploaded that 2151 form and indicated that this person we're recommending sanction for this person. And the reason why this one is down here, it's a little bit different, is because this is in regards to a person that's already gone past their, initial appointment phase, and now they're into the monthly progress, change in activity, that phase. So those are the areas that would be, again, of interest to you, I'm sure. So again, I'm in test, so I'm going to go ahead and click on one of the dashboard items, and I'm going to select the progress page for this person. And we've added, some really just a real brief description of what's on this page, which items populate the enrolled customer dashboard, and then also instructions from this page. So again, we're starting to go through and adding, where it makes sense, those instructions into building that into the system, so it's easy access at your fingertips. One of the items that, as a DHS contact, what you can do is you can customize, and make it so that you can identify a specific person as the primary contact for this customer. So at any time, you could go into the person's progress page and update this primary contact for DHS. And in the list of people that are here, these are all the people that have access to that customer at the office level and region level. So they can be selected, just select update, and that information is updated. The CBO will be able to go in. They're going to have a primary contact automatically listed for their training programs, but at any given point in time, they could choose to go in here and select a separate CBO contact for that person. So if they needed to update that, they could do that. They say, well, that's great, but really, why does that matter? One of the reasons why it matters is because you can go in here and add a case note. So if it's a situation where you have a customer and they are just not responding to you, one of the options that you could do is, as a CBO, I'm logged in as test, and so I can't do this right now, but I would be able to, if I was logged in as a different account, I would be able to select like DHS primary contact or customer eligibility team review. I would be able to select these options Again, if I was logged in with a different account, I would be able to see that I have my CBO contact information down here. And you can choose who you want to send the information to. You can choose to send it as an LMI WorkNet message or as the LMI WorkNet message and an email, or you could just choose it to save it as a case note. Actually, yeah. So you could choose to send it as a WorkNet message and an email. That's probably the one that that's what I would suggest doing. It is going to automatically save it as a case note, but if you're talking about trying to get a hold of a person, then and you're unable to, then that's one way to contact the DHS contacts. So let's say we finally get a hold of our person, and they come into the CBO, and the CBO, but they forgot their 2151 form. Like, oh great, now what? So no fear. They can download the 2151 form. And as we were told, we discussed this on Wednesday, they can go ahead and we'll have a lot of these fields already filled out. They can go ahead and the CBO can complete the form. And if it turns out that the customer, receives these services and needs to have the document signed, then they can go ahead and have the customer sign this document and so forth, and then they can save the document onto their computer and upload the document. So I'm just going to choose a document that I already have out there to upload it, and then you can make a note and say, customer signed form or something like that, whatever is meaningful. And you can see the date. If I wanted to look at the form, I could, look at it, download it, print it. I can see the note, and I can see it's uploaded. If I made a mistake, I could go ahead and remove it and re-upload it. Not a problem. You'll be able to see their appointment status, and those are the items that were on the dashboard that I had discussed. Some of them may be backdating their appointment dates because they've already had the appointment. Then they'll go in and enroll them into a training program. And then the first of the month, then they'll go ahead and download the 2151A. It might pop up here. And they will complete this form. They will save it. These are the items, the yellow, green, red items that we had talked about that will populate the dashboard. So they'll be able to select one of these, and they'll only be able to have one of these selected in order for the form to be uploaded. And then in this recommended course of action, the recommended sanction is the one that populates the dashboard. So as soon as they upload this document with those fields completed, then it will automatically update the enrollment dashboard. And you'll be able to see, again, let me go ahead and I'll upload one that I already have so you can see that one. And I can make a note. Yeah. Oh, I just chose one that didn't have everything filled out properly. There we go. And so I had one that we have the date. You can see the progress right here. You can download that file. And if I had added any notes, you could see what the note was. And then you can see who uploaded that document. So you, as a DHS caseworker, have access to all this information and the case notes. And then you can use case notes as a way to also communicate directly with the CBO contact for this particular customer. And that note would also be documented in the case note. So before we move on to anything else, were there any questions? And Dee, you can shout them out, or Tammy, Deidre.
The big concern was from Joseph Ventura about what the actual process should be if a participant misses their first appointment, should they should the CBO try to reach out one more time, or should they go directly to the DHS office to do the conciliation?
And this is Tammy. I know that we've talked with the CBOs that they have to make multiple outreaches, and it may be the fact that after the first miss, it needs to be documented because they do have to document back to DHS within 48 hours of what happened. So I guess that would be a conversation we'll have to have, is how that's going to look if they miss their first appointment, and to show that documentation, but also indicate that they're still attempting to reach the client. Is that something that's feasible?
Right. So currently we have an appointment status flag to let you know who has missed that appointment. Some test here. Oh, because I already have other stuff. The person's enrolled, so I can't do it to that customer, but I have to find a different customer I can show you. So the CBO would go in and indicate that they didn't show up for their first appointment, and so you can have access to that. If that's acceptable, then we can, that we, like Tammy said, we've been telling them that they need to make multiple attempts.
Click on that, Natasha.
It's D. D didn't show up for appointment.
Oh, I'm such a bad girl.
Okay, so what's the next question? That's what we have right now, and I guess the follow-up is we need to talk with DHS staff.
So if the CBO has done the appropriate due diligence after the 48 hours and they're not able to contact the participant, then are we saying it is then the caseworker's responsibility to begin reaching out to the participant and starting the sanction process? I think that's what
I would say that sounds reasonable. And what we may want to consider, and I'm just throwing this out, is if they don't show up, obviously we're not going to get the 2151 on them because they've never appeared. Maybe what we can do is upload a 2151A and indicate that they need sanctions and document in the case notes that they were a no-show for their initial meeting.
That is here. We have the next step down.
Okay.
So we have scheduled, did not show up for the first appointment, and then recommend sanctions. I think what we would need to do is further clarify for this first appointment, just to define it out, the process out more specific, is that if they didn't show up to their appointment and they're unable to reschedule that appointment within 48 hours. Is that a correct statement?
Joseph Ventura is asking if he can talk. Did you dial in? And if you dialed in, type your phone number into the chat pod and I can unmute you.
And I think Region 1 would like to speak as well.
Or we can just unmute. Hey, Dee, we'll just unmute everybody. And then if there's background noise, we'll go ahead and start muting people.
Okay,
that would be great.
Region 1 did not call in. They are on their laptop. So,
okay.
But we can just go ahead and unmute everybody, like I said, and we'll just...
All right. So if you don't want to talk, mute your phone just so that we don't hear your background noise. All right, so Joseph, you should be able to talk. Oh, let's try it again.
Your microphone has been turned on.
There we go. All right,
Okay.
now I pressed the right button.
Yeah, I started talking, and I'm like, I don't think they can hear me. Okay. So I'll tell you a little bit because I know it's going to be a little bit different than what they would be doing in E&T up north. But down here, this is Williamson County, so we have our CBO is Mantricon, and they are getting the notice of the 2151. Like, I actually met with the actual person in that office. They're getting it, instantaneous that, hey, a person just got added in because I was having a conversation with her, and somebody in Jackson County just got referred to Epic, and she's like, oh my God, you just updated to another person. So the way that their process is they get it, and they're trying to actually contact them over the phone first, like you guys talked about. So they're trying to, bring them as much as they can over the next 2 days to try to actually get them, hey, this is what's going on. We need to get you in here so we can get this process started for you. Whenever I explained it to the Mantricon person, our policy is, well, one, we have to have everything in writing. So if we're just doing phone contact, that's not anything that we can hold a person accountable to. We have to actually have it in writing if we're not catching them on the phone, that we tried to set them at least the first appointment for them to come into the CBO. It's on the CBO to get them in there at least one try. I know you guys were talking about multiple tries, which I don't necessarily think is an issue. Other than normal ENT, they don't get multiple tries to actually make an appointment unless there obviously is a conflict or they call ahead and say, hey, ask for a reschedule or something like that. So if the CBO is trying to get them by phone, that's great, but they have to start the process to put them on the clock eventually, which they only need to set one appointment for them to miss. And then once that happens, the CBO would then let us know, hey, they missed the first enrollment appointment. And then we would then set them a conciliation at the DHS office to say, hey, you're now back to being mandatory. You didn't show up to Mantricon. What are you doing? And then they would say, well, I wasn't able to do this, or they give us a good cause reason or something along those lines. And then we would set them right back up to go back to Mantricon. And all of this whole process has to be completed within 30 days from the date of the first noncompliance. So the date from that first scheduled missed appointment, we have to conciliate them and or sanction them by the end of that 30-day period, or we are outside our guidelines to be able to hold them accountable. So if we give them a month to come into the first appointment, that's fine. We just only have 30 days from that date that they've missed the first appointment.
Got it.
So that's whatever you guys do with the CBOs, that's cool, because we definitely want people to do this. I'm just worried about, what about the core ENT people that get one shot and then a conciliation, and then that's it? Like, they're also in the study as well, and they're not getting phone calls. Like, it's like I said, it's a little bit different with us. Our actual CBO and our local contractor for core ENT both set the appointments themselves. We don't say, meet there on this date.
Right.
They're actually doing it.
Yeah.
Does that actually explain that? I know that was kind of confusing.
Can I read back some notes I was typing while you were talking?
Sure.
And see if I got it right? So if they don't show up and don't call within the 48 hours and then meet, there's nothing to, and I've got this in quotes, reprimand them with. So the process has to be started to start that 48-hour clock.
Yes,
If
I mean,
nothing happens within 30 days of the first noncompliance, they either, 30 days they have on the calendar to either proceed or a sanction happens.
Basically, they get two chances. So
Okay.
the phone part of it, where it sounds like almost everybody's CBOs are trying to get in contact with them or having them come into the office of that CBO within that 48-hour period, that's kind of irrelevant. We have to set them an actual physical appointment for them to actually show up at the location in writing to be able to start the conciliation process. So if they miss the first appointment, they get a second chance during the conciliation to make things right. So they show up to us and we say, you got to get to Mantricon by X date, and they have until that time to make it there. If they don't, and as long as it's within a 30-day window from the date of the first noncompliance, which is the first missed appointment, then the next action that we would be taking would be the actual sanction.
But Joseph, I've got a quick question.
Sure.
Is Matricon under the assumption that they have to get them in for an appointment 48 hours after they've been referred to them?
With the person I talked to, they're trying to do everything they can to get them on the phone, and I reiterated that you have to eventually move to putting them on the clock. Otherwise, we're not holding these people accountable, which I know that we're trying to get them into the study, but there has to be an accountability eventually, which starts that process that
So
we're talking about.
what
Yeah,
we probably need is case notes then for them to document their phone calls.
Yeah,
but
because
here's
that's
what we
true,
have.
because they should be held accountable just like the regular SNAP ENT
Right.
participants.
Yeah, but here's the tools that we have that we can use. First of all, they can document in the case note, and they can send it to the DHS caseworker, and they can send it to the customer as well. That says, hey, we have we got a hold of you, thank you very much for taking our call, whatever. We have your appointment scheduled for Monday at 3 o'clock. I'm going to send you the 2151 form updated with the scheduled time, and I'm going to send it to this address or something like that. And so they could download the 2151 form, fill out the appointment date, send that appointment, send it in the mail to them. So then the customer has it via email if they have an email. And there's documentation in the case note of what is going to be done and how it's going to be done. And then they will also follow up with a paper copy, so we could say, just generally speaking, if it's, allow for 7 days for the appointment maybe, unless the person is right there and can do it, prior to that. And then that will get that clock ticking. So they'll go ahead and put scheduled appointment in the appointment status, and they can schedule out put the appointment date on there. And then, if a person doesn't show up, the Monday, 7 days from now, whatever it is, at 3 o'clock, then that would start the conciliation process, right? So they would call and say, hey, did something happen? Did you forget about the appointment? We need to go ahead and start this. We need to get you set up for a follow-up appointment. So then at that time, would they, again, put a case note in there and say, hey, Dee, sorry you missed your other appointment. I'm going to resend you another 2151 form with a new appointment date. Is that how that would work?
Normally, if they get in contact with them, this is where we're in the realm of we're trying to give them as much help making sure they make it, because it is the actual treatment group, so to speak. But, normally our correspondence is all through the mail, especially, whenever you're sanctioning 20 to 30 people a week, inviting, roughly up to 60, it's not the easiest thing in the world to actually get everybody on the phone. So it's primarily correspondence through the mail. So in that situation, like what you just said, if the person was set an appointment 7 days out once they reached them on the phone and said, hey, you're due in on that date, if they didn't show up, it wouldn't be a matter of calling them. If the CBO is going to try to call them, that's kind of on however you guys want to do it, but that's not the normal process. If it's a no call, no show, as long as they basically have until the end of the business day to let us know that something happened. They can always claim good cause after that, but you're kind of looking at the time frame. Hey, something came up. They call. It's like, hey, I missed it today. I know I was supposed to be there. This happened. Can you reschedule me? There's a potential that we wouldn't even have to go through the conciliation process. But if we don't hear from them by the end of that business day, on the following day, the CBO would need to, let us know, hey, so-and-so was a no-call, no-show. We need to start the conciliation process. So then we would set them a notice 7 days out, very similar to what they did on that first appointment, to try to get them in to conciliate them, like, hey, what happened? Why were you not there? Did you get a job? What's the deal? And then from there, we would have, less than 30 days, because the clock has already started, to get them doing what they're supposed to do back at the CBO, and the CBO let us know, hey, they've complied, and we can stop the conciliation process.
So a quick question then. Currently, how is it communicated between the CBO and the DHS caseworker if there was a no-show?
Well, that's where, with what Natasha was talking about, where you can update these notes and send it to and from one another within WorkNet. With us, with our core ENT, our contractor, they just email us, hey, so-and-so were no-call, no-shows. Here's a copy of the, the initial appointment. That way we can have that documented. And then we set the conciliation. With what I talked to with Tina at Mantricon, I told her, what we would need to do is make sure it's in writing on your side, and then you would let us know via, she's cool with emailing me. I know in Chicago and the bigger areas it might be a little bit more convoluted to email an individual. I'm the only person doing it in my office, so it's easy to keep up with me. But, it'd be however we're going to do the actual correspondence. between the offices, and then we would know, hey, we need to send a conciliation for that person, preferably the following week, because we are on the clock to get them compliant.
But the 30-day, doesn't that start when we are notified of their non-compliance? That's
Right.
what it says here.
From the initial date, I think it's like day 0 is the non-compliance date.
So that's when the CBO informs you that this client was a no-show, and then you have 30 days to do your conciliation before you do sanctions.
Yeah,
right, so I guess I must have missed something in this. So they're trying to contact them within 48 hours by phone. If they don't, then they're scheduling them.
Well, no, they have to. It's my interpretation that the 48 hours is when the CBO has to communicate with the DHS office of what the status was of that appointment.
Okay, so what's I guess I don't understand if they can't get them by phone. We haven't had anyone yet that hasn't cooperated.
Yeah,
so
the CBO could schedule an appointment, say, for a week from the point that they were assigned to their group.
Okay.
But then once that appointment is set, then the CBO has 48 hours to respond back to DHS the status of that appointment. Is that correct?
After they don't show, right?
Yeah, so either they showed up and they're enrolled, or they didn't show, or whatever. And in WorkNet, they can do that. So I think what we're trying to do with the WorkNet system is capture everything that needs to be communicated electronically in this. So the DHS staff can go into WorkNet and they can see, Natasha, go to that one screen, they can see, okay, somebody was a no-show.
Right.
And so you can, and they can, and then what we need to do on our side, the Department of Commerce side, is to make sure that the CBOs are entering case notes that are appropriate to communicate what's going on with that client.
Well, I don't think the CBOs necessarily know that, because when I met with them prior to Mr. Ventura, they were trying to reach people by phone, then they didn't know what to do after that, and they didn't know they were supposed to contact us, and they didn't know how they were supposed to contact us.
Yeah, and it's that they're probably right, because we're in the process of developing that whole back end as we're going now too. So we're having training sessions for them on the 16th of May in Chicago, and I think it's the 19th in Springfield, to walk through the system. So they're probably telling you accurate. They're not, they haven't been totally engaged into the system yet, and pieces of it are still transitioning as we're going on too.
Okay, well, it's difficult to answer because we don't know what their responsibility is in that. So you're going to teach them the middle of the month sometime?
Yeah, the 16th in Chicago.
And in the meantime...
And it's actually the 16th, the training session is going to be at the 59th Street, the E&T office.
Okay.
So the thought is...
we just need to tell them in the meantime to set appointments in writing if they don't get them by phone.
Yeah.
Well,
and
I'm not sure, Natasha, you can respond to this, but there is going to be that scheduling calendar that's going to be incorporated, so the DHS office can actually schedule them for an appointment with the CBO before they leave. So once that component's established, that will help considerably too.
Do we know when that would be?
The piece that we are missing in the short term between that calendar was communicating that what they need to do. We've told them they need to go into the system and set the schedule appointment date, but the follow-up is, and we can send a message out to them, is to say, point of clarification, go into the system, set the appointment date, download the 2151 form, make sure the appointment date is in the 2151 form, and you have to mail that out to the person, and better explain this process. So we just need to follow up with that point of clarification, like for the short term. Chris is working, he finished up the progress page, got this out, and has been working on the calendar. So I'd like for that to be out hopefully midweek next week. Well, of course, always yesterday, but
once the calendar's done, then this will eliminate a lot of this, because the clients will leave your office with their first appointment date with the CBO.
In the offices that are not as busy as the Chicago office, you're welcome to call your CBO before the calendar function is up and functioning. You're welcome to call the CBO and try to schedule an intake appointment right then, so that as you're filling out the 2151 for your client, the date and time are on there already. And then, Natasha, do the the DHS staff have access to this progress page, right? So they could actually put the date in there.
Well,
if they actually talk to the person.
Yeah, they could. But they could. But they could update they could put the schedule appointment date in there, I guess, themselves. But
and then it would show up on
I think in the short term, I mean, if that's part of your process that you already do, or it's within your realm, to be able to call them and set that date, then that's great, and put it on the 2151. If not, that calendar function should be out shortly. In the meantime, download it. We just need to tell them, flat out that it must be done. You need to do the mailing part. They need to have a hard copy. So we need to send that message out anyway, but to the CBOs.
And in general, we currently, if you look at the dashboard, have 27 participants that are pending. In other words, they have not been scheduled at all. So are we...
One of the questions the CBO had was exactly when does the mandated hours kick in?
Right, because you've got 20 people sitting out there now that have been referred, but no appointment has been scheduled.
And there's a very good possibility that they just have not gone in and put the information in WorkNet, because I know that there are people that are enrolled in the programs. I just would, like I said, we're having this training for the CBOs start this month. So It's a very good possibility that they just haven't documented it in the system yet.
Okay.
Now, some of them, I'm not saying that's the case for all of them, but I know in some cases that the people are already engaged.
Right.
And involved, they're just not documented yet.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that some of them have not documented it, but some of them still may just be pending. And so then we've got the situation that Mr. Ventura has raised, that you've got participants who should be in compliance and, are just sitting.
Yes, exactly. So, and that, like I said, that's something that's the part of it we're working on now, is to get that part so it's flowing.
Okay.
And being documented appropriately.
Great.
And also when we have these meetings, I think that in both the one in Chicago and the one that we're going to hold in Springfield, it'll be great to have some DHS staff present for that too, for questions and everything when it comes to policy and procedures. So we definitely want some input. Plus, it'll be nice just for the case workers to meet who the providers are.
Yes.
And get a feel of who they are and what they're doing.
Great.
Natasha, we have a question from the chat pod about the functions under the progress page that the DHS caseworkers may need to pay attention to.
Okay. Yes. So whenever you go from your dashboard, you'll get your list. You'll select progress page. I can go there real quick. Go to enrolled, and I'm on test now again. So if I go to, let's go to one of these people, you'll see that they have profile, progress, and plan. So you go to the progress page. And one of the areas that you want to, just to make sure that the appropriate person is updated as a primary contact. And, it's not that other people can't access it. Anyone, if you have access to whoever's in your office, you'll be able to access this person's information. But let's say somebody goes on maternity leave or medical leave, and they're, the primary contact needs to be somebody else. Any one of you can go ahead and change that at any time. And then, again, you can just download any of the forms that you see that you would like to see. And then the other thing is to, if you want to see the history on their 2151s, you'll be able to look at their 2151A history. So as you add more and more of these, then obviously you'll see the date. You can just see their progress at a glance. You can download those forms at any time. You'll know who made the update. So those are the main things I would think as a DHS caseworker. And then obviously
show
the
them
case
the
notes.
Under the appointment status?
So you can see their appointment status as well.
click the drop down.
Can you click on the drop down?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it's kind of just more of a progression. So they scheduled it, didn't show up. Next phase is did not show for the appointment. After that, it's recommend sanction.
And Mr. McMorris is saying that the CBOs are stating the customers are not coming but not requesting follow-up.
The customers are not requesting
The CBOs.
follow-up?
CBOs.
The CBOs are not requesting follow-up. Okay, so just so I better understand that, so the CBO, okay, the customers are not coming but not requesting follow-up. So we could look into that further, and is it they're not requesting DHS to follow up yet because they're still in the process of trying to do their own follow-up, possibly? Or are you saying they're just kind of dropping? Yeah, okay.
Could we add another option on there to add a DHS conciliation requested on that drop-down?
Well, I believe the way I understood it, the recommend sanction is the one where they would.
That would be the one that would cover that.
That would initiate the conciliation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's a situation, though, that you wouldn't necessarily want sanctioned recommendation. I'm just thinking that, like, obviously I get it, but for the people that might be, I don't know who's doing it, if it's going to be a newer employer or employee or an older one, but, if they never got enrolled but they were referred to the EPIC program, then it's technically supposed to be conciliation, not just a sanction. If you want to make it just a blanket sanction, you might want to make sure that everybody is aware of what that actually is.
Mr.
So do you think the
McMorris,
terminology needs to be conciliation and then sanction? Or what she used, she just used the terminology off your 2151 form for the sanction recommended, because that's what's currently being used on your form. So, but when the CBO checks that and provides that to you, is that when you do your conciliation first before sanctions?
Yeah, if they never got enrolled, as in they never showed to the first appointment, it would be a conciliation. If they were already enrolled, going through the process, and let's say they're supposed to be going to their training program by then, and they're not attending like they're supposed to, they're not following up with the CBO, and then the CBO conciliates them, and then they don't show up to that, then they would be recommending a sanction.
Okay, and at that point, you don't do conciliation; you just do the sanctions.
Yeah, we would make sure that their ducks were all lined up, that they did the initial, what it was by whatever date, and then conciliated them, and they missed it, and then, the next thing would be the actual sanction.
Sanctions. Okay.
So we do have, according to the 2151A, we do capture both of those situations. We have conciliation that's captured, and then we also have recommend sanctions. So whenever you go to the enrolled dashboard, the conciliation process is right here. And then we have recommend sanctions. So really what we could do is just simply add text for DHS review, and we could add a flag here. So if somebody selects that they're recommending conciliation, or they're starting conciliation, we could send out a similar email Illinois WorkNet message as we do for recommend sanctions. Because on the dashboard currently we have both of those. The difference is obviously wording, but we don't. This one will send out a notice. This one does not send out a notice.
And keep in mind, at the CBO level of this, and this is what we've talked about with our evaluation team and with our FNS regional administrator, that once they go into sanctions, and if they're kicked off of SNAP benefits, the CBO can no longer provide obviously any services to them in what they're doing, with the exception if they've paid for a training program. Say they've enrolled them in a community college and they've paid for the training program, and they've gone past the point of return of being able to be reimbursed for that. The client can still stay in the training as long as the training has been obligated, even if they are no longer eligible for SNAP benefits. And based upon, and correct me if I'm wrong, but based upon SNAP E&T policy, if they were employed and they can provide retention services for, I believe it's 90 days, with them being kicked off SNAP or not being on SNAP benefits. So it's very important for the CBOs to monitor who's being sanctioned and who's off SNAP benefits, because those could be disallowed costs to them. So, like an example would be if they've paid for the training program and it can't be reimbursed, the client can still stay in that, but they couldn't do any supportive services, so they couldn't pay for any transportation or anything along those lines, because that would be a current expenditure against the grants, and they're not they're not a SNAP client. So this whole section is very important, especially on the CBO side, to make sure that they're not going to be getting disallowed costs because of services to people that are no longer on SNAP benefits. Does that make sense?
Joseph, yes.
Yes, that makes sense to me.
Yes.
I didn't know if you wanted it in chat but yeah, it completely makes sense. And that was something I wondered about as well, is what happens if the person becomes non-compliant in the middle of their actual training program, and then we have to go to a sanction. How would that work if the CBO has already put forth the funds for what it is that they're actually doing? So that's actually nice information for us, I think.
And I would anticipate the only way, if they're still being active, if they're being, still participating in the training program, they're not going to be sanctioned because of inactivity. They could be sanctioned because, somebody else moved in the household and the income went up. Or, you guys know better than I, why people fall off SNAP benefits. So the sanction part of it, and if that's more of an eligibility issue than a sanction issue, obviously, correct? If their household status changes.
As far as household status, but yeah, we're looking more at the idea of them doing what they're supposed to do as far as whatever the CBO has put them in, the requirements that, I'm assuming with the way it is in the core, where they have to follow up at, so many days out of the month, or, at least once a month, that if they're not keeping up with them, and I'm, like I said, I don't know how the training programs are going to be and how they're going to keep up with them on that stuff, but as long as there's the contact that they're supposed to be making and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, then you wouldn't have an issue, and you would like to think that if you went that far, they would do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah,
so.
And that's the thing. That's what the CBOs have been told, that these people are in the treatment group. They're always in the treatment group. You have to do everything in your power to make sure you keep them engaged and active in your training programs. And in some cases, Chicago's more difficult because of how we're placing with the orientation, and it's the separation was designed by our evaluation team because of the random assignment and the pilot project of it. So we're not always going to have a perfect fit when we refer a client to a CBO in Chicago, and we may have to move them to a different CBO, and we've done that with a couple clients already. If it's not a fit. Outside of Chicago, we have one provider, so the provider can move them within, different training programs that they offer, if it's not a good fit. But at minimum, we tell them that they have to at least do employment services. So they have to work with job readiness and placement services and retention services. And that's the last resort. We want these people to get training. We want them to get credentials and certifications and competencies in the career track that they're going into. But at the minimum, they have to work on job placement.
I have a question, and somebody that's actually on the call can answer this, because we had it from a CBO. When does the 80 hours mandatory participation start? And if somebody starts with a CBO in the middle of the month, are those 80 hours prorated?
I can't remember who answered the call. They answered that the other day, but it is prorated, so they would expect like 20 hours a week. And correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but they wouldn't expect, if you came in on the 15th, they wouldn't expect 80 hours on, the 1st. So it would be prorated. To what level, to what degree, I'm not sure, but.
All right. Chris is asking also, is the computer going to be the effective, is the communication between the CBO and DHS going to be on the computer, or will there be staffings?
I think the communication should be, documented within the computer. One of the things about having, like, using the case note tool as opposed to just email outside of that, it creates a case note and sends an email, so that's kind of a bonus. But as far as the staffing, I will let someone else answer that question.
And Chris, when we have this training for the CBOs, and that's why we want your guys' input in this too, because we want to make sure that we are communicating correctly. And, it should be documentation and communication through the system, but also, on the phone. So, and, your traditional ways of the way you communicate with your providers. And it should be both because, you both need to be working with this client. It's in our both best interest for this to be successful in the long run. So both sides need to be communicating and working with the client. And, this is something that this is a pilot project. This is something that we need to, as we're going through it, develop and, make it better as we're progressing. But, Chris, I think that's, when maybe you can get with us when we start talking about what we're going to do with the training with the CBOs and information that you guys want to interject in that training program also.
All right. I don't see any other questions in the chat pod. Natasha, Tammy, do you have anything else that you need to bring up?
No, we're getting numbers. I think, we're definitely going in the right direction. There's still a lot of work to be done. And specifically, like I said, on the CBO side, we're just starting to really engage these people. So, and it doesn't surprise me that there is, a little confusion in the field and lack of communication in some areas. But that's something that we're going to be working through. So, like I said, we had our first CBO meeting just not that long ago, and we were doing webinars with them, weekly webinars. But then we're doing our first official training on the system, this month. So it will get better. And like I said, this is a work in progress. That's why it's a pilot project. But hopefully by the time we get to the last quarter of this year, I'm hoping that we're really going to be rolling well. Natasha, anything?
I think what I would like to collect next week is some information on when they if you know of any reasons why people are declining to participate, or if there's any other thing. I'm not sure the right question to ask yet. Or maybe did not attend the consent meeting. I don't know if there's anything that we need to look at so we can better help with making better referrals, or anything that we can do on the front end to help people with moving through the process. It doesn't look like the numbers are, outrageous on, not showing up or declining to participate, but I think, if you can, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, if there's anything that you think we need to know or need to discuss that can help the process, just kind of make a mental note of it, and then we can share that next week. So, all right. Well, thank you, everyone. We went way past our half hour, but I think it was a really good conversation, so appreciate your participation. And anyway, let us know if you have any questions in the meantime. You can send them to epic@illinoisworknet.com. Thank you. Bye-bye.